Hey there, I'm Kristen with the waywardhome.com, and I'm super excited to be talking with Katie Larsen today of So We Bought a Van. Our topic is mental health, but I first wanted to jump into just some nitty gritty stuff. Like, Katie, I want to know a little more about you and how long you've been living in a van. So let's start with that.
Yeah. First of all, thank you for having me on. Also, I'm super excited to be here again with you and chatting. Um, yeah, I've been in the van for over 5 years now, full time. Which is, I mean, time just flies. It feels like the years just keep tacking on. But I am currently in my third van that I've lived in. So I started in 2016 in a Sprinter, converted that for 6 months or so, moved into it spring of 2017. Traveled in that for about 2 years, give or take. Um, I traveled with a partner for a while, and we were in his Econoline for a while, and then I've now been in my current transit for about 2 years now. So um, kind of a lot of switches, but it's been a really good route so far.
Yeah, and it's interesting that you've lived both by yourself and with another person. So I think you've gotten like a really full view of what van life was like. To get to know you a little more, tell me a little about like how much you've lived alone versus with another person.
Yeah, so I was with a partner for my first year. Traveled really fast. Only planned to do it for a year, and then thought that we would sell the van and kind of transition back to normal life, if you will. But I fell in love with the lifestyle, and I just was really grounded, and I felt like it was kind of what I was supposed to be doing at the time. So I continued on from there by myself for about a year and a half, I want to say, maybe two, and then traveled with a partner for about a year, year and a half again, somewhere like that, and then um, have been solo since. So kind of a little bit of everything. I have a dog with me now. I've had a dog with me for the last 2 years, so that's also kind of a new way uh, to kind of travel. It changes how you travel the same way it changes if you're by yourself or with the person. So yeah, a little taste of everything, I think.
Yeah, so in the very beginning, what was it like for you transitioning to solo life? Like what was that like? I mean, that's not easy for a lot of people.
Yeah, I sometimes think about how perfect everything kind of had to align for me to end up where I am, which I mean, I kind of feel like a lot of people say that, but I it wasn't even my idea in the first place. It was somebody else's idea. I wasn't really aware that people really did this as a lifestyle or full time, or that there was a community. So, I don't know that I maybe I would have. I don't know that I would have bought a van though and ended up living in it by myself if I hadn't started with a partner. And I really think that in a lot of ways, gave me a really good foundation to feel really confident going into solo female van life. And it still is, I mean, completely doable. I just don't know that I would have ever had the idea really even presented to me. um, so in that sense, I kind of knew like how to drive a big vehicle already. I already knew my vehicle. I'd lived in it for a while. I understood really elementary level, but I understood how to find boondocking and free camping. I kind of had like a lay of the land in a lot of ways. So um, that foundation was really helpful for me personally. But obviously, there are still a lot of changes. There's a lot of transitions. I went from kind of hanging out in the back and not driving a whole lot to then being the person that drives the entire time. Obviously, spending every waking moment with somebody and then going to having nobody around at all is like a big transition. But that part was really challenging, but it was really important. And I think that it ended up being kind of one of the more pivotal moments of my entire 5 years of living in a van. So, um, yeah, a lot of alone time, a lot more slow travel. I think I only went to maybe one or two states, maybe three in the first 6 months of traveling by myself. I really just slowed down and revisited some of the places that I loved that I don't feel like I had enough time the first time around. So, yeah, it was just a really big learning and growth period. And that was really when I kind of started getting into the community aspect. Also, I started attending my first van gatherings, really making friends now that I knew I was going to be doing this for longer than just a year. And so it was a lot of pivotal things that totally just transitioned the way I traveled and lived in the van. So, um, yeah. Yeah, it was good.
Awesome. Yeah. So I wanted to talk, of course, about our topic of mental health and how that relates to van life. Like, what about your story, and how does mental health tie into the van life for you?
Yeah, such a big like aspect of my journey before the van and in the van, and also why I still pursue it. It's such a big piece of that. Um, it's something I try to talk about as much as I can now that I'm really comfortable with where I am and I have a really good grasp of understanding my own personal mental health. Um, but I really struggled as a teenager. I had just a lot of emotions. I had a lot of like high energy and frustrations, and I felt really off. And I first started getting help with mental health services near my senior year of high school, early college. So um, I started going to therapy. I really started to dive into that, which is something I still do. Like you and I were just chatting, I said I have therapy with my therapist right after this, and it's the same person I've been seeing for a long time. So um, that was also at the same time when I started to take mental health medication and kind of get that squared away. A lot of my mental health has been at certain times circumstantial or situational, but I really kind of fall into more of a category of like a long term chemical imbalance. And I think it took a really long time to understand that. And part of that was kind of living in a van and learning myself, especially by myself. But being able to kind of understand that has really helped me navigate the complex like things of what to dive into with therapy. Is medication short term or long term for me? How do I manage my mental health long term? So um, that was kind of the intro of it all. I kind of dabbled on and off with medication for a while and mental health services. I traveled internationally for a while, um, which is a little challenging, obviously, to um, make assistance services like that a priority. But when I got into the van, for the first time in 2017, I was really in a weird place. Like my mental health was stable, but I still had a lot of internal struggles and things that were going on that I was really just pushing down a lot. I mean, as many of us do. Um, and when you're traveling, we traveled 50,000 miles our first year in the van. It was really easy to just continue to push stuff away, push stuff down, say I'm fine. Um, and then my biggest transition was really that part of going into solo, van life, being by myself all the time. There's not really any distraction. It's just me. You can't really hide from your own thoughts that much when you're by yourself. So while my travel style and everything changed, that was really really pivotal also for my mental health and just figuring out who I am. Honestly, in college and all my 20s, I always lived in a household with multiple friends, and there was always people in and out and a lot of busyness and noise and plans. And this was the first time I ever just sat, you know, by myself, quiet nature. I wasn't working very much at the time. So I just had a lot of free time to really dive into kind of some of those darker places and demons that I had been holding on to for a really long time. So yeah, I mean, it's always kind of been a role of management, but that was really the cracking open of really understanding myself and really understanding my own mental health. And from there, there's been different seasons, there's been different curves, but it's something that I've worked. I don't want to say struggled with, but it's something that I've just worked with. It's just been part of me for so long, and I've really come to terms with the fact that that will probably be true for most of my life. Um, but having just the space and the time and the quietness to really dive into that was important for me. And it's one of, like I said, the reasons that I stay in the van is it's really just this lifestyle gives me the opportunity to continue to learn about myself, continue to challenge myself, continue to do maintenance on my mental health. And I mean, it's kind of the driving factor, I think, of it all for me. So that's my long, long-winded answer of my history of it.
No, that's great. I was thinking about when you were living alone and sort of confronting your own mental health and learning about yourself. How did you do that? That's not easy for people to do. Did you journal or were you in, did the therapist help you think of ways to address this or how'd you even start?
Yeah, I mean, at that point, I wasn't doing regular therapy, but yeah, a lot of journaling, just a lot of truly just sitting. Like I would pull up to camp and I would just get a chair out and I would just kind of sit and be outside, go on walks, hike. And I really tried when I was by myself for the first chunk of time to not fill my space and time with people and noise and music and all of this stuff. I really just tried to be with myself. Um, and it was like a weird time, as you would imagine. Your brain is so complex and there's so much going on. But journaling definitely helped. I reached out to people as I needed. My mom is just like a godsend. She can look at me and know if I'm having a good or bad day mentally. So processing a little bit with like my family and close friends. I had a life coach for a little bit, which really dove into some of the bigger like philosophical things I was struggling with. Um, and then eventually, I started seeing a therapist regularly, but it was really just, it's not like I was working through things, but I think a lot of it was just learning to not be scared of myself and my own mind and of being alone. Um, I think that was really scary for a long time because I was nervous about what would come out or where my thoughts would travel to and travel to. That's like so funny. Um, but yeah, I think it was really more of just like an acceptance and learning to be okay with myself and where I was. And then from there, it's something that takes constant maintenance. It's something I have to be aware of. And like I said, there's always seasons, and I have to pivot and shift and learn how to tackle that. But it's just kind of an ever growing learning curve, I guess.
For sure. And if someone is starting to feel certain ways, like, are there any tips on how they would know if they need therapy or if they're feeling certain ways? Like, I'm not even sure how to like say this, but are there any
Yeah.
signs that people should maybe start pursuing mental health care more if they're especially maybe alone or living in a vehicle for the first time, which can be jarring, like for people, I
Mhm.
think. So I'm wondering if you have any advice about like that, like when someone maybe should try to find a therapist to help them.
Yeah, I think I I always love talking about mental health. I feel like it's always important to say like we're not professionals, right? But what we can do is we can talk about our experiences and share, and I can say like what my opinion is. But I think personally, I mean, I would just say if you are even feeling like you're curious or like you're struggling with anything, I mean, everybody can benefit from therapy. Like I read this thing the other day that was like if you were a child once and you had your own childhood, you could probably benefit from therapy. Um, so I think even if you're in a great place, talking with somebody, learning more about yourself, all of that is great. But especially if you're starting to struggle, opening the door to allow yourself to be okay with discussing mental health and seeking out services, like that's big. Um, and we're also at a place right now, I feel like, where 5-10 years ago this wasn't really talked about as much, whereas now I feel like it's like a really prominent conversation that's happening in communities and society and movies, media, all of that stuff. But when I was in high school, like we didn't know. When I got on my first antidepressant, I was 17. My mom took me to my pediatrician. Like we didn't know where to find services. But nowadays, like my primary care doctor is like really in tune with my mental health. He's the one that does the medication. He and my therapist. It's kind of like this all inclusive. Um, I don't know. It all kind of works in together. And there have been times where I didn't have a therapist and I was able to go see a primary doctor and they were able to kind of help direct me. I personally use telehealth therapy. So obviously living in a van, um, I use BetterHelp, which I love. I had a couple therapists I worked with shortly that I didn't love, and then I found one that I did love, and I've been with him for 3 or 4 years now. Um, I think what's the other one? Talkspace is another one that does teletherapy, and then there's also like psychology.com. If you don't want to go with something that's as mainstream, I guess, as one of those services, you can find most psychologists and counselors and therapists now are offering telehealth therapy, especially after COVID. So yeah, I think if you're curious, it's never a bad idea to dive into your own story and your own emotions, and even just to have emotional awareness or vocabulary to figure out, maybe I'm not struggling really bad, but I know I thrive better in this environment, or I know that these things cause me to have a harder day. For me, that's like my triggers of, you know, trauma or any of the other things I work through. But it's all just, I think, a matter of knowing yourself really well. And I don't know if anybody can actually really ever fully check that box. It's not like this journey that you complete and then you're like, I'm done. There's always more to do. So, um, yeah, I hope that helps. I feel like that was kind of like a round robin answer, but there's a lot of options.
No, it definitely helps. And I was curious about using telehealth for therapy as well, like BetterHelp, because I've heard the ads and podcasts. I think probably everyone
Yeah,
has. And I was wondering, like, is that really a good program? But you've had great luck with it. And do you have any tips for like choosing a therapist that you are meeting online? Like you said, the first couple didn't work. Is there anything any tips that you have about choosing the right one?
absolutely. I mean, I am like very passionate about finding a therapist that works for you. I hear friends that are like, I've been seeing my therapist for 6 months and I don't love it. And it's like therapy can be expensive. It's time, it's energy, it's you're emotionally cracking yourself open, and it should be quality for you. Like you should find value in that. So I always say, if you're not vibing with your therapist, switch. Like just do it. You're not going to date somebody or be close friends with somebody if you guys don't match. Um and I mean, the thing that I loved about telehealth therapy is like when I was first trying to find somebody, you don't even have to have a conversation with them. Like, hey, I'm going to go seek services somewhere else. You just click a button that says like find a new therapist, and then it terminates that. You don't have to have an awkward conversation. And that is really great. You also fill out a form, like an intake form, so you can request if you really want somebody that has a specialized area like sexual assault or DV, or a religious background, or specializes in divorce or whatever that is. So being honest in your intake forms. And then like I always do my research. Like I look at the therapist, I look at their profile. um, some people prefer to work with a certain age range or something. I look at like the type of therapy that they do. There's a lot of different styles of psychology, and different a lot of people will include like a psychologist that you would study in like a textbook or something, that they kind of follow their theories. So I do some research like that, and I just try to figure out, does this sound really good for me? A lot of people just want talk therapy that's just like a therapist is listening and is a sounding board, whereas some people really want someone that's more active with driving the conversation or assigning homework. So finding somebody that does literally sessions the way that you think you would receive them well, but also your first session, I it can be hard to just have these really intensive emotional, you know, trauma drop intakes with somebody. Um, so while you're letting them get to know you, I always say, like, be honest with what you are wanting. If you say, like, I really need homework, or I really need you to ask me open ended questions, or I want to focus on a topic every week versus I want you to ask me how my week was and if anything happened this week. Like it's you're in control of it. It's you're paying somebody else to work with you on your mental health. So I just try to give people like confidence in that starting process. Like you prioritize yourself, be really honest. And even if you don't know what you want, you can say that, but communication with them is going to be important. I mean, it's therapy. That's the whole point. That's the whole point. So
Yeah, yeah, that's cool. There's just so many options these days out there for people. And so some of it's probably covered by like health insurance, and some is probably you
Mhm.
have to pay out of pocket. And I think sometimes that cost is maybe deters people from getting help. I don't know if you've talked to anyone who have any advice surrounding like paying for therapy or how that works.
Oh yeah. I've gone all of the routes. I've done, in-person therapy. When you're in like college or something, a lot of times that those resources are free. Or if you like work a job at a business full time, a lot of times they do have services that are connected that they can help kind of, um, maybe it's like you get 6 free sessions, or we can at least find you somebody. But the one thing I will say is if you're just going to go find somebody on your own, like psychology.com, um, there are a lot of different ways that therapists bill. One of them is through insurance, which, you know, a lot of insurance does cover, especially individual mental health therapy. Um, Sometimes it's a limited number, sometimes it's unlimited, but sometimes it doesn't cover therapy. Some therapists only take specific in-network patients, or if they don't take your insurance, you have to pay out of pocket. If that is the case with a private practice or a private individual, um, they can offer sliding scale options. Sometimes it's for a specific number of people, but that basically is like you pay in percentage to your income. So I've done that before where it was really personalized to me, and that's always just a really gracious thing of anybody that works in any human service field to offer. Um, but one of the reasons that I love BetterHelp is because my insurance requires me to see people in Oregon, and they have to be in network. And I obviously am not in Oregon, where I'm a resident here, but I'm not here that often. So um, BetterHelp is fairly reasonable with pricing. It's a lot more reasonable in my experience than seeking out a private practice. And they also do offer different billing plans. So like I just recently went and looked at my billing, and I was like, I'm paying every month, and if I bill quarterly and pay upfront for 3 months, I save $150, whatever it is, Um, and BetterHelp does also have, I feel like this sounds like I'm like sponsored by BetterHelp, but this is truly just all my personal experience. But they also do have kind of like a scholarship where you say this is my income, and they can give you deductions based on your own personal situation. So I have found at various stages of my life where I have a little bit of money or more money to put towards something like this, BetterHelp has really been for me the most affordable, and the most willing to just work with my circumstance as it shifts. So I think during COVID they gave out like a month of free sessions to a lot of people, or if you refer friends, you get free sessions. Um, it's a really good program. I've been really impressed with it.
Cool. That's so good to know because I think there's so many boundaries for people seeking this out or
Mhm.
barriers. And I think that that helps break down some of those barriers for people to reach out to someone and get that help they need. So
Definitely.
that's very helpful. Yeah. I'm
Yeah.
wondering also the stigmatization and destigmatization of mental health. Do you think more and more people are talking about it? Are you seeing this in the van life community?
Yeah, I think it's definitely being talked about more in just in general, but I also do feel like, the van life community tends to be, in my experience, more of a vulnerable population. We're more, um, I feel like to live in a vehicle and to travel and to just live kind of small and intentionally, no matter how you live in a van or travel in a van, you kind of have to have some sort of mindset and intentionality with your time and your effort, and you have to be okay with being fluid and being by yourself. So I think that there's already like kind of a really strong foundation that I found. Almost all of my friends I've met since living in a van and that also are living in vans, we had mental health discussions like right off the bat. Most of my friends now, we have really similar behaviors or mental health seasons and patterns. I've never met like more people that are just willing to talk about it, which is so incredible. And I've tried to see that kind of trickle out into the rest of my life as well. But I just have been always really impressed with how open and honest people that I've met that live on the road are. Especially, a couple years ago at some of the van life gatherings that Van Life Diaries was putting on. um, I was asked to help out with a mental health kind of seminar. So there was an hour where, I don't know, a group of maybe 50 people, maybe more, sat in a giant circle, just like on the grass. And I was kind of a mediator, a monitor, I guess, of some sort, me and a few other people. And we all shared our own stories. And then we kind of opened the floor up for other people to share their stories. And that kind of turned into this popcorn of like, one person shares one thing, somebody encourages them, somebody else says that I had a really similar experience. And it was just like the most, I get chills thinking about it. It was the most beautiful thing. And then, of course, we all did a huge group hug at the end. And um, it was really, really powerful. And it just gives you this look into a person to know, some of their more vulnerable moments of their life just so quickly. Maybe it's probably why I feel like my van life friendships have blossomed very fast and very strong. But definitely, I think I didn't really even talk about it my first year in the van or on the road when I met people, and now, like, it's one of the first things I feel like people know about me because, um, while I think there is, of course, still a stigma, I do think that so many people are making steps in the right direction, and companies and businesses are, making efforts to help support employees. And I just feel like in general, it's becoming more of a societal conversation, which I'm just like so happy to see. I'm so happy to see it.
Yeah. So what if there's other van lifers on the road and they want to find people to talk about this stuff with? Like, what are some ways that van lifers can connect with other van lifers to have these types of discussions? I mean, how do you find people?
Yeah, well, I think one of the beauties, and I know everybody feels differently about it, but social media is like such a big tool. um there are goods and bads with everything, but if you can find a way to use social media to really connect with people in an open and honest way, um that's really powerful. I mean, it's how I've most of my friends that I have now in the van community are people that I met and I chatted with online for like a year or two before I even met them in person. um and I think that a lot of people on social media, it's really gone from this like, look at this picture to like kind of an open journal for a lot of people. People really share their stories and their own experiences and, their different seasons. And it's something I really try to do so that if I do make a new friend or I'm connected with somebody online, like we can have those conversations. If I see that somebody else is talking really openly about something, I obviously feel comfortable reaching out to them. And I want to kind of do the same. So I think trying to fill, the same way you fill your life with the things that you want to see and do and the people you want to connect with, like try to fill your feed with the people that you feel like either provide resources or education or insight in some way for you. And don't be afraid to message people or talk about it. There's also a lot of group therapy that you can do if you're really wanting to dive deeper with a group of people. I recently did a group therapy for women who have a history of sexual assault and domestic violence, and that was one of the more powerful things I've ever done. It was only 5 of us, and it was supposed to be 3 months, and we ended up going 5 months, and we all still communicate really regularly now, and we built these relationships. And I'm 30. I was the youngest, but I think the oldest was like 62. So it was just this great range. So there are a lot of group therapy things you can do as well. And then, like I said, those van gatherings, people are starting to talk about it more. There are seminars. I think we're starting to really expand beyond like not just like how do you cook in a van and how do you change a tire or how do you find boondocking. There are a lot of seminars at gatherings now that are like how to manage solo safety or how to manage mental health on the road or how do you get medication on the road. So gatherings are such a big resource. I mean, they're so powerful and you're going to connect with other people. You're probably going to learn a lot and you're just going to have a great time. So I would highly recommend those. And they're starting to vamp up now, that kind of the pandemic is, the world is opening back up. So yeah, I'm excited. I'm gonna go to my first van gathering in like a couple years in February. So yeah.
Yay. And well, you just touched on something I was curious about. How can someone get their medications on the road?
Yeah. So I can share how I do it, and then I can share how I know some other people have done it. I think it is really going to depend on the state that you live in, because every state has different rules and regulations, or the state you have residence in, if you have health insurance or not, what kind of regulations those health insurance have, and then kind of tying that into like how do you receive mail or packages. Some people have a PO box that they use, which is great, and there are so many ways that you can receive medications now. There are services that at a lot of different places that every month you call and you refill and they ship your medicine to an address or a PO box. So that is really great, especially if you are kind of sticking around one general area. um, you can always go into a pharmacy and fill a prescription, or go into Walmart and fill a prescription. Target has a pharmacy now. And that really is more, I think, if you are traveling far over state lines and you don't have insurance and you're paying out of pocket. um, Me personally, my insurance will not cover mental health medication filled outside of the state of Oregon where I'm a resident. So, again, my mother is a godsend. Um, I call and I manage all my own prescriptions and I get them filled. And then she once a month goes and picks up the medications for me. I'm actually going to start doing a shipping to the house so that it's one less thing that she has to do. Um, and then I have her mail them to wherever I am. So you can go USPS, United States Post Office, to a USPS. You can ship general delivery, and then I always call ahead and make sure that that post office does accept general delivery, and if they have any ways they need me to like write on the package. But usually, if you do the post office's address with general delivery and then your name, um, they won't call you when it gets there. But I have my mom do priority mail, and it comes with a tracking number, and then I just stick around a place for a couple days, go to the post office and get my meds. And that has worked for me for 4 years. Um, some insurance and some prescriptions, they'll let you fill for like 3 months at a time or 6 months at a time. So when I was traveling internationally, I was able to do that, which was really, really helpful. So really circumstantial, but it is not impossible. I think that that's a really big barrier. Like I went off medication for a while when I was traveling in my early 20s because I was like, it's just a hurdle I can't deal with and it's too complicated. But I think that pharmacies are really trying to make that more more doable for people. So
Mhm.
yeah, and I'm happy to always help. Like I'm not an expert, I don't know everything, but like if anybody's like has a logistical question, I'm happy to help research or just share my own experiences. So yeah.
Great. Yeah, very helpful advice. And I'm wondering if you have some advice on things people can do to care for their mental health on the road that don't have to do with therapy, or what have you found that really works well for you?
Great question, great question. I think being outside is huge. Again, one of the reasons that I live in a van is I really require fresh air. I require being outside, and I my mental health diminishes so much whenever I try to like stay someplace long term, or if I go home for the holidays. It's kind of always a harder season for me until I get back in the van, and then my therapist is like, "You look like yourself again." Um but just being outside, I mean, is so important. This is the first winter I've had in 5 years, and that's not feasible for everybody, but like staying in the sun like has seriously physically like changed my vitamin D levels and just my mood. um Exercise is huge. Like I think a lot of, if you're not wanting to do therapy or medication or any of that, or even if you are, your doctor's probably going to tell you the first thing is sleep, how you're eating, and if you're exercising. Like those three things, if you take care of your body, you're gonna feel a little better. You might not feel great and it might not solve all your issues, but it's gonna feel a lot better than if you don't do any of those things. So I don't rigorously exercise or anything, but I walk my dog every day for an hour, even if it's broken up. um I try to fuel my body with decent food. I'm not the best, but I try to be cautious of what I'm putting in my body, especially like I kind of have some sensitivities to like a lot of sugar. So I really try to, again, know myself over the years, kind of know how did my eating habits affect my mental health. Um, and sleep. I'm so sensitive to sleep. If I get like 7 hours versus 8, I really struggle. So I'm not that great with a routine, but I always make sure I'm getting enough sleep and I prioritize it. And if I need to shift plans or cancel an appointment or whatever it is, like I I have a little reputation with my friends that I don't wake up before a certain time if I stay up late, but it's what my body needs and it's what works for me. So yeah, it's kind of a bunch of different resources. Journaling also. Journaling is so great. I think that that's such a good way. Meditation, yoga, stretching, anything that kind of just gives you some quiet time um, is great. I try to sit for like 10 minutes a day and just total silence and not do anything. Um, and just those tiny things, I think, really, really help when you build those routines into your days. So, a lot
Yeah.
of options.
Yeah, I think that's so true because I can relate to your sleeping need because I have that too. And just knowing your body and what you need. And like I downloaded a Headspace app. I don't know if you've used that for
Mhm.
meditation. So I think that's
Yeah.
like a great resource for people as well. It also helps put me to sleep immediately if like my brain is racing. So
Oh, yeah. During one of my really, like, high anxiety seasons, I used, I can't remember what it was, but I used an app that would either, like, have stories that they told in a soothing voice, and then after a certain amount of time, your phone locks and shuts off, or, like, sound machines or falling asleep to, like, rain sounds. There was a while where I couldn't really sit and fall asleep if it was really quiet and dark, so, there's so many resources, like, you know ask other people, like, what we're doing now, what works for you, or I'm having trouble sleeping. Do you have anything that you would suggest? Because there's so many ways that you can learn to try new things and just take care of yourself, so being curious, I think, always helps.
Totally. Yeah, it's all such a big deal. And just being outside, like you said, like even
Mhm.
now, as you can see, I'm in a house. And when I'm house sitting and when I wake up in the morning, I feel a twinge of sadness. Like, where is nature? And it's just
Mhm.
a funny how when you do live the van life, you become so connected. And I think it just raises our spirits as humans to be living in nature, which is probably where we're supposed to live. So
Absolutely, absolutely. I have to I've been kind of parked at my parents' house in their driveway for the winter, like, just because, of the holidays, and just I had some appointments I had to do, and I've been in the van, and, my dog's also a husky. I really wanted to give her, like, a colder winter, so we've also been camping around in Oregon to find snow and stuff, but, this is my first real winter in 5 years, and, like, man, it has been rough. I never felt like seasonal effect growing up in Oregon, but, like, it made me really, really aware of how much daylight and temperature and the cold, wet rain, it just is like it's really, really heavy. It's really intense. So yeah, I mean, I hear you. I don't like to wear shoes very much either. That's like something I don't do when I live in the van. I'm just barefoot all the time. The other
Mhm.
day my mom was like, "Katie, it's like 30 degrees outside and you're barefoot, like put on some tennis shoes, but it's one of the things that I like. It makes me feel like, people talk about grounding and stuff. It's just kind of
Mhm.
about part of being outside for me. So
Yeah, me too. I love all that and can't wait to get back out there. I'm like a
I know.
dog that's penned up. I'm like, I need to go out for my walk.
Seriously,
But
yeah, yeah. I'm excited for you to get into that next season too.
totally. So, yeah, I'm wondering if you have any advice for people who aren't living in a van yet, but curious about it and wondering how it might benefit their mental health. Like, what would you say to them?
Yeah, I think, obviously there's not a one size fits all, but I really do feel like being being outside really helps. For me, also, just part of the benefit of mental health within the van is really intentionality. But a lot of those principles are things that, like, if you are not ready to live in a van or that's not of any interest to you, you can still apply so many of the things that we're talking about to your daily life. Like, be more intentional with going outside, on your days off, go for hikes, spend time outside as much as you can, try to get in sunshine, set a morning routine. Um, like, one of the things that I do that is always happening in the van, obviously I'm outside all the time, but if I'm like visiting a friend or seeing my parents, I have this little table and I will like lay a blanket out in the grass and go work like my full work day outside. And I have my, my mouse and I have my laptop and my iPad and everything. And I make a little work office, but I do it outside. And I do that in the van too. I work outside on the ground. So I think that you can kind of implement a lot of these things regardless of if you're living in a van. But if you are looking to, live in a van or kind of pursue more of a nomadic lifestyle, especially when it comes to your mental health, there are so many resources. Social media is a great tool. It's how I learned how to build my vans. All my vans have been DIY, and that's because of, blogs, YouTube, van lifers following or responding to my DMs on Instagram. So, you know, do some research. I have a blog post, I think, that's all about mental health on the road or taking care of yourself on the road. And yeah, get curious, ask questions. And I know it's never this simple, but like, if I can just give one thing, it's like, I don't feel like life is meant to be miserable. We don't have to do anything that we don't want to within reason. So if you're not feeling great, if your mental health is struggling, or if you're not happy with your life or something, like, I would encourage people to see if they have the ability to make some changes and try to figure out what works for you, no matter if it's mental health, your living, your job, your relationships. Like, life is meant to be fulfilling and it's meant to be enjoyed. And even as a person who struggles mentally so frequently and deeply sometimes, like, I still am able to find moments of joy in the things that I do, even if it's not all the time. So intentionality is so important. I so believe in that. And I really think it's like the biggest tool you can have in your toolbox.
Yeah, so true. Such great advice. And is there anything else you wanted to say before we wrap it up?
Um, I mean, I think just, I love to chat with people. I'm online. If you are a van lifer, or even if you're not, if you travel in your car or you're even near where a van gathering is, like, hop in your Prius or your Toyota or whatever it is, like, go meet people, try to find people that are, living intentionally, talking about mental health, have the same priorities as you, and just, yeah, there's a lot of van gatherings coming up, so I'm going to go to Van Life Pride in Arizona at the end of February. There's a lot of those, and again, all of those can be found online through, Van Life Diaries, or Van X has a calendar. So um yeah, I just always here to connect, always happy to chat with people. And I think I also do just want to say, like, if you are struggling and you have the emotional ability to reach out to somebody, please do. Please do. Even if it's somebody and you just need to tell them and nothing happens, like, do that, please. And also, just, we all just got to be nice to each other. Like, everybody is struggling in their own way. You never know what people are going through. And sometimes one thing can be said. And if somebody is having their own struggles already, like, you never know how big of an impact that can have. So we just got to be nice to each other. We have to. It's important.
Yes, so true. Well, it's been such a joy chatting with you. And of course, people can find you online. Just tell us real quick where people can find you.
Yeah. So everything I do online is under So We Bought a Van. It's SOWEBOUGHTAVAN. So on Instagram, it's So We Bought a Van. Facebook, So We Bought a Van. I have a website, soweboughtavan.com, that has different resources that I use, different, information about living in a van, building your own DIY van, or gear that makes living on the road a little bit easier for me. There's also like a form submission there, so you can send me a DM, send me an email. Um, I have like 5 videos on YouTube of, different chunks of my van build if you want to see that too. But yeah, I'm online. So come say hi. I'd like to connect.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for joining the summit.
Yeah, thank you so much. I'm really excited to see everything. So I really appreciate you having me.
Yeah, no problem.